Hello and welcome to Route 664, the road to human kindness. I'm Les Winston. I'm the national spokesperson for socialcharity.org. That's a project of the Endow American Network Foundation. And our objective is to endow America using the power of 664. 664 and the theory of social charity, where 664 equals E squared. We're going to be talking about that a lot. When we talk about gifting, we also talk about gifting non-cash assets. And one of the biggest assets in most people's portfolios is real estate. And so I had a chance to interview Bruce Geist. Bruce is the founder of the Realty Gift Fund, and the Realty Gift Fund does real estate services for donors. And here's that interview that we did a couple.
Les, my partner and I have been in the real estate business, each of us for about 40 years. And we've been partners since 1992. We have given up our private practice at this point in our careers we founded a nonprofit that we call Realty Gift Fund. And running Realty Gift Fund as the two founders and two of the board members and the two chief executive officer, chief operating officer. That's all we do these days.
Okay.
So,
real estate market's having a rough go right now. It looks like the real estate market's going to have some problems for the near future. Does that enhance the need for what the organization does with real estate? In other words, does it help? There are people out there right now who are trying to figure out what to do in the real estate areas, and how do you help them?
Well, let me just start by saying that the reason Jay and I started Realty Gift Fund is because we observed a couple of decades ago a statistical disconnect between the amount of real estate held as wealth in America, which is about 40 to 45% of America's wealth, real estate,
mm-hmm.
and the amount of real estate that goes into the charitable pipeline when you look at all donations that are given to the nonprofit world in the course of a year. The nonprofit world is a super large part of the economy, employs between 10 and 12% of America's workforce. Almost $500 billion was given to the nonprofit world last year, but less than 2% of it came from gifts of real estate. So less than 2%, despite the fact that real estate is 43% of America's wealth. Jay and I saw a problem. It signaled an opportunity for us to help. We discovered that the problem was not that donors didn't want to give their real estate. It was because nonprofits didn't want to accept it. It's too complicated. It's too much risk. It requires too much money.
Right.
We created a nonprofit that does nothing but accept charitable gifts of real estate. When title passes to us, we trigger the tax benefits for our donors based on the appraised value of the real estate. And we fix and sell the real estate, and we send the money to the nonprofits our donors are supporting. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
We have simply stuck ourselves in the middle of donors who are trying to support the Girls Club or cancer or food issues or educational issues or what have you, and the nonprofits simply don't have the resources to accept complex assets like real estate.
Yes, and I think that the use of non-cash assets in supporting nonprofits is extremely important. We've been promoting the concept of 664 to get people to get acclimated to the number 664, which is a section of the tax code like the 401k or 529. But your organization actually is symbiotic with the concepts of 664. It takes it one step further, though. The conversion of the real estate asset not only becomes a gift to charity at some point, but it also produces income to the individual for their lifetime. The only difference is that the tax deduction is smaller because there's an income interest in the process. But I've had several clients who've made very large gifts of real estate, and I think you who are listening to this, who might be wondering how this applies to you, you need to think about it in terms of, am I going to have a real estate transaction at some time in the future where I'm going to sell a piece of real estate, or I have a real estate capital gain? If I have a capital gain on the real estate, is there something that I can do to capture some of that value and keep it for myself while also giving it eventually to charity? So what are you finding as far as other advisors are concerned? Do you find that the advisors have an understanding of what it is that you actually do, or does it take? It's because sometimes people have their own way of doing things, and the advisors, it's sometimes hard to get them off the dime. To think about this in terms of gifting real estate. They know how to gift stock, but the real estate's another issue.
Well, if you go 100 years, the permanent tax code was created in 1917.
Mm-hmm.
And it was back in 1917 when the concept of non-cash assets became a viable solution for a donor who wanted to give up their wealth
mm-hmm.
without having to dip into their pocket, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they could give their assets instead of giving their income. And so for 100 years, or over 100 years now, the nonprofit world has found it largely less. And I think you're probably familiar with some nonprofits who are very good at saying yes to a gift of real estate. There are, there's 1.3 million public charities in America.
Mm-hmm.
99.5% of them just say no to a gift of real estate, but some say yes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because so many say no, there's no life to the conversation of a gift of a non-cash asset. And so your point is well taken. Financial advisors sometimes are just not aware that their clients can give real estate to the nonprofit world because it really doesn't come up that often.
Mm-hmm.
The mission that Realty Gift Fund has, we spend at least half our time, 60% of our time, processing real estate gifts all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
We spend all the rest of the time educating people on the giving, the charitable giving of non-cash assets, of real estate in particular, because you can do it and not enough people ever will know about it.
Right. And I think turnkey is a lot easier than eventing. So I think that's just, a great way for that to occur. Unfortunately, the nonprofit world, the way that I've kind of, or the way that I think most people look at this is that they're more interested in the current dollars and not necessarily in the future gifts. And one of the things that real estate does is also creates larger gifts, and those gifts can be used for endowment. And unfortunately, most organizations don't really focus. They want to focus on endowment. They'd love to have endowment. They want endowment, but getting to the point where they actually can build it is difficult because they use current money.
Let me put some meat on the bone that you just said. Okay.
Sure.
Last year, the average gift size that we processed, average $600,000.
Yeah, that's great.
There is a researcher who is very well known in the nonprofit world. His name is Russell James, professor of philanthropy at Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. He does mountains of statistical research on what is viable for the nonprofit world.
Mm-hmm.
And by examining 1.1 million tax returns from a select number of nonprofits over a 5-year period, he was able to demonstrate that a nonprofit that will accept gifts of non-cash assets, grow their endowments, to your point,
right,
at 6 times the rate of a nonprofit that only accepts cash.
Right.
Now, you project 6 times the rate out over a 10-year period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what road do you want to be traveling on?
Yeah, no, that's what needs to happen. We need to have sustainable social organizations that are doing what they're supposed to be doing in the community, and that's sustaining values there come from their endowments. And if they don't build endowments, it doesn't happen. We've coined a new formula that we think is the most powerful formula, the most powerful economic formula on earth, and that's 664 equals E squared, where E is endowment. So we want people to understand that they can use 664 to create endowment for themselves, which is love of themselves, and also an endowment to leave behind for the nonprofits that they want to support. And that's the second love for their community. So we're very, very much attuned to the non-cash assets. And if you have a situation coming up where you have a real estate transaction and you want to find out if there's a better way to do the real estate transaction or to make your tax situation better or whatever it is that that could happen as a result of that transaction, if you want to change that, you can. And folks like Bruce and myself, Bruce, what do you have a website people can go to?
Sure. Yeah. It's realtygiftfund.org. Okay. We are a 501c3 public charity. Mm-hmm. Our donors, when they make gifts of appreciated real estate to us, all we do is real estate. They avoid their capital gain taxes. They avoid the recapture of depreciation. They get a tax deduction for the appraised value of their real estate, no matter what we sell it for. Mm-hmm. We make it really easy for them. As soon as the deed transfers from them to us, the gift has been made. They're done. There's this lingering obligation on our part to fulfill the contract we have with our donors by fixing the real estate. And by fixing it, I do mean repair the hole in the roof, paint the house, replace the carpeting. If it's a shopping center, which we've done before, we actually had to go in and repair the parking lot, the exterior lighting, the signage, the landscaping, because it was a 70% vacant shopping center. So we put a leasing program underway to improve its value. That's the work we do. We spend our own money doing that. Mm-hmm. When the asset sells, we repay ourselves, and whatever's left over, we send out to the nonprofit world according to the lingering instruction, looking back to the donation agreement that our donor and we signed.
Yeah, the donor agreement is a very important piece of any giving arrangement that people will make because it kind of sets the parameters for the tax deduction and also what they want to happen with the gift.
Right.
Power to direct that. So, what would you say? We have a minute or so left. What would you say to a gentleman who's listening to us right now, or a lady that's listening to us right now, that has the need for the property to be sold because they don't want to support it anymore for whatever reason is that they're letting it go, but they also want to be able to get some tax relief, and they also want to make some gifts, major gifts. Mm-hmm. So what is the driving force behind that? Is it the making of
very, very good question. I'll tell you what, Les, gifts to our organization that are initiated purely for tax reasons are very difficult to make work. The math, if you're just involved in the math and how well can I do if I don't have to pay the government all these taxes? Mm-hmm. Well, frankly, most of our donors who are really successful doing what they're doing lead with charitable intent. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, they've got an asset which they have owned for a while. It has appreciated in value, but it has no use in their life anymore. And the best example is a ski cabin or a beach house where the couple bought the house when their kids were 3 and 4 and 5 years old. Everyone vacationed there. 25 years, 20 years. Now the kids are grown. They're married. They live all over the country. They have kids of their own. And the parents are too old to really enjoy the place by themselves. And the property is worn down a little bit. And they're saying to themselves, now what do we do with this asset? It actually is an asset they don't need anymore.
Right.
And
right.
they have charitable intent. They would like to support the public library, the Humane Society, cancer. They'd like to open a donor advised fund for the family, whatever the cause may be.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect scenario for what we do. If the donor says, I like the Humane Society, I've got an $800,000 asset, but I don't like them that much, I'd like to give them $300,000. We will write them a check for $500,000 to tailor the gift portion down to what they would like to give. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, so they can give a partial interest in the real estate. They don't have to give the entire piece of real estate to the nonprofit organization, but it gives them an opportunity to make a sizable gift and to make a pledge to an organization that's meaningful.
Correct. We can do a bargain sale, which is part cash, part gift. We can do a partial interest. We just closed on a 15% interest in a vineyard in California, generated $800,000 to the nonprofit world.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the beauty of working with someone who is an advisor. That's where I would categorize your work. So actually, I don't know if we have you on our roster, but you should be on our roster, a place where you can find the advisors that do this kind of work, and you should be there. If you're not there, I'll make sure that you're listed there.
Okay.
That's it. You go to socialsecharity.org, socialsecharity.org, and go to find an advisor. That's where we have a list of the Council of Professional Philanthropic Advisors, people who understand how to do this. So we're a nonprofit organization, and we do that free for people who we feel are professional philanthropic advisors from their experience or from their education. So we appreciate your time today, Bruce, on Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness, and look forward to having a chat with you in the not-too-distant future. We can do this again. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Les, you're doing good work. Thanks for that. The Road to Human Kindness. What a great theme.
Road to Human Kindness, and that is our most important objective, Route 664, the Road to Human Kindness. So I just want to touch on a couple of things about real estate. Real estate is a really good tool really good asset to use in your charitable giving if you are looking at a transaction that has capital gains tax attached to it. Most of them do. If you have a shopping center that you've owned for 25 years, your depreciation period is over, and your maintenance expenses are going up, and your taxes are going up, and your insurance is going up, and you don't want to be in the real estate business anymore. You don't want to be a landlord anymore. You don't want to have to worry about collecting rents. Those are all things that were great and were good that asset was supporting you, and that was an important use of the real estate. But now it's more than you want to handle, and the value of it has increased so much that it's actually would generate more income if it was sold and you could reinvest the capital that you would get from that sale. But you have the issues of taxes involved, and you need to make sure that you're going to maximize that asset, and that's in most cases that's what planning does, maximizes it for the purposes of the future. So you could use a 664 device for that. You can use a 664 trust to handle a transaction like that, so that you don't have to pay the capital gains tax on the sale of the property, and you also get the income from the entire amount of that property's value. That's an important feature. Plus, you get a tax deduction. So it's a really powerful tool. Most nonprofit organizations, as Bruce was alluding to, don't want to take real estate gifts because they don't really know how to handle them. They're concerned about whether they're buying an environmental problem and all of those things that go into owning a piece of property that you're not familiar with. So it is a skill set, and the use of a professional philanthropic advisor to help you through the process is invaluable. I did want to move on to, and it's actually in some of the ways it's part of what we're talking about here. But our Route 664 lesson number 2. Last week we had lesson number 1, which was the cost of living, and that everything is surrounding that is an individual. You're out there wondering why you might be interested in what we're dealing with here as a youngster. You are looking at phraseology or terminology that you may not be familiar with, words you haven't heard, but cost of living is pretty simple. That's what it costs to live on a regular basis. Your monthly expenses, your rent, your food, et cetera, et cetera. And that is also generally supported by capital. Now, that capital is a lot of different things. Capital defines value that you own. It defines income that you receive, and the value of that income has a capital value. So your cost of living is supported by capital. And capital is actually broken down into 2 basic categories: personal capital, and then there's social capital. And that has been true forever. I remember as a kid, what is your personal capital? Your personal capital changes over time. What you own is your personal capital. What belongs to you is your personal capital. And I remember as a 5-year-old, I had a collection of stones that I used to hide behind a loose brick in a place near the playground I used to play at. And that was my capital for a while. I used to put stones in there, odd colored stones and things. And I used to go check my capital every so often. But capital is relative. Food can be capital. In tribal times, the capital was the food that people grew and the land and the loyalty of the tribe, which was generally based on family or familial. But tribal, religious, when we changed to religiosity, the assets then were what you would be able to earn as an individual, but there was capital that was given by the community. And when we talk about personal and social capital, we're touching on that. Personal capital is your net worth. You may hear these terms as you go through life. Net worth is what you own less what you owe. That's what your net worth is. And the net worth is the accumulation of all, or the total sum of all of the things that you own. That's your personal capital. And your net worth is based on that. They use the words assets and liabilities. Assets are the things that you own, and liabilities are what you owe. So your personal capital is what you control. That's all yours. In tribal times, there was also a requirement of some social capital, because in order for the tribe to be able to succeed or be able to function, you had to share. And sharing was part of that. That's what social capital was. It was the charitable feeling of goodness, of giving to others. And that's how the world existed through the tribal and the religious periods. In the religious period, people used to give, the church used to ask for people to give to the church so the church could take care of the services of the community, or the synagogue could take care of the services in the community and provide for people's needs. And that's how social capital was generated at that time. But when we moved into the political era, when government became the force, they decided that through taxation, they would be providing the things that you used to provide by giving, by making it mandatory, so that there was a way for the social fabric to continue. And taxes became the other form of social capital. Taxes are generally involuntary. They're taxes that are being taken, and charity is voluntary. So, it's a lot of times we'd use the term philanthropist, and people say, if I ask people, are you a philanthropist? And they generally say, no, I'm not. They don't consider themselves a big charity giver. But if you're a taxpayer, and most people are, you're a philanthropist. You're just an involuntary tax-paying philanthropist. There's a difference. But social capital is taxes or charity. So this is the basis. When you accumulate capital, you're going to have these two. You're going to have your personal capital that belongs to you, and then there's going to be a piece that you can either voluntarily give to charity, or it can be given, or it will be taken in the form of taxes. And this is basically an outline of how a financial plan is generated, how you individually can have some understanding of the financial terminology and how it fits into your situation. Your cost of living is supported by your capital, and how you accumulate this capital is something we're going to get to in lesson number 3 of Route 664. And Route 664 is the road to human kindness. We stream our ideas on route664.org. If you go to that, you'll hear it's live because you're hearing it then. But we stream what we're talking about. We stream feelings of goodness in the music that we stream, and also in the interviews that we've done with people who are philanthropists, people who work in philanthropy, people who understand how giving is so powerful, and who have used that in their occupations, so to speak, in putting together what they think is a better world. And that's what this is about. This is about love for yourself and love for the community. And it is all brought to you by Congress, which is pretty significant. We have talked about Social Security forever. We know what Social Security is, but now we have a new term called social security. And social security is all about 664 and the other charitable devices that were given to us. But 664 is a way for you to remember there are times in your life when you're going to want to utilize 664. You need to be prepared for that. You need to have that in place before you get into that situation, so that when the situation arises, it's not difficult to handle. And those situations can be just a sale. You might have a stock that were lucky enough to buy, and it went up, and you made a lot of money there, and you've got a capital gain, and you don't want to pay the tax on the capital gain. And a good place to put that is in your 664. If you're beginning in the financial world, if you're beginning to get your financial literacy boots on, you have the opportunity to use a 664 at a very young age. You can use that to accumulate gifts that you get from people. You can use that, not people, but from your relatives, birthday gifts, whatever, bar mitzvah. You have money that you've been given. You can use that in there. You can try to get your, maybe your allowance, the way you deal with things. Maybe you sell lemonade. I don't know. You can do a lot of different things. But those are ways for you to accumulate capital and to put it into a 664 that you control and you'll own for the rest of your life. And that's something that you can feel really good about, because at any point in the future, if you needed to use the income, you could use that as a substitute when you're not working. So you've got an opportunity to start young, and starting young is very important, because time and compound interest are very powerful forces, and you can use those throughout your life. You also will always have this as your personal trust. Section 664 was given to us in 1969. It's nothing new. We just haven't used it, and we want to get everybody to use it. There's no reason why any individual should not have their own 664. It is actually easier to do that in some ways than to get a 401k, because with a 401k, you've got to go to an employer, and the employer has to provide it for you. The 664 has the same kind of premise, where you're putting money aside for the future. You get some favorable tax benefits out of it. It's protected, and it's very powerful. This is Route 664, the road to human kindness. You can find us on YouTube, on Amazon Music. We're out there. We're trying to get the message out in any way we can, and we certainly would appreciate any contributions that you might want to give to the organization, to the Endow America Network Foundation. We are a 501c3 organization. We work on charitable contributions, and anything that you might want to give us would be a help. So hopefully we'll be able to build this throughout the next year to the point where it's going to be well known, and you won't be questioning questioning what is 664. 664, the road to human kindness.